The original Golden Axe for the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive is an absolute, undeniable classic. Now, while the game itself was based on an arcade game, so it's basically a port, it stays very true to the arcade game. Obviously, the graphics aren't as good as the arcade. How could they be? This is a 1989 game for a home console. But being one of the first ever beat-em-ups for a 16-bit console, it was superb in terms of what it was. You could play as three different characters. You could play as the dwarf guy with the axe, the kind of shirtless Abercrombie & Fitch male model with the sword, and of course the hot chick, and all of them have different kinds of attacks. For example, I've noticed the chick is faster, the guy with the sword, I'm not really sure what his deal is, but I did notice that the dwarf is probably the best character because not only does he hit like a truck, but also he seems to have the best range. And also, they all have this attack where you double tap and run, and then as you press hit, they kind of rush into you, kind of an almost tackle, if you will. And it seems like the old dwarf character is perfect for that because the dude has horns on his helmet. I mean, he's half bull by nature, so he just has the best attack when it comes to bum rushing enemies. He even looks like it. And of course, he's got a gigantic, overcompensating axe, you know, a la Cloud from Final Fantasy VII, except he had a gigantic sword. The game has a variety of different mounts that you can have, from the weird beaked lizards to dragons that either fire projectiles on the floor or actually shoot projectiles out at far and distant range, which is probably the best kind of mounts. But I've noticed the mounts are more of a hassle to keep than actually something positive to use, because every time you get on the mount, it seems like you get thrown right off of it. I mean, you got to be really quick to maneuver, not to get hit with the mount. Really, it seems like whenever I get a mount, I feel like I'm carrying around something valuable. You know, I got something cool and I don't want to lose it, and it just kind of hinders my gameplay because all I'm trying to do is not get hit instead of hitting the enemies. The game has a realistic function where you don't just regain health. You get health by killing little gnomes that run around after you pass a certain stage. Well, to be fair, you don't really kill them. You just kind of kick their ass around a little bit. But you swipe your weapon at some of them, so at least you're trying to commit murder with them. This is also a nifty way to collect magic. And different characters can hold different amounts of magic. And that's also another difference with the characters. But even though the dwarf can't hold a lot of magic, I still think, pound for pound, he's the best character you'll play as. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, everybody wanted to play as him. You know, me and my friends would come over each other's houses and we'd play this game on the Sega Genesis. And we basically had to draw straws to see who gets to play as the Viking and who's stuck with the woman, or even worse, this guy who has like the worst range, and I really don't see what's good about him at all. He's probably the worst of the three. Now, on top of the story mode, or arcade mode if you will, there's also a kind of gauntlet, where you go through a gauntlet and you kill enemies. At first, they start off easy, but then as you continue on through the different battles, the enemies get harder and harder. There's more of them, some of them have mounts, and so on. By about the 6th enemy, you gotta also remember, your health doesn't regenerate, just like in the actual story mode. So by the 6th or 7th enemy, it gets really hard. I found it really difficult to get past the 8th enemy, or even the 7th enemy. And I mean, having this gauntlet in which you face all the enemies you face from the story mode, but just in a tournament type setting, it's brilliant. And for this to be implemented in one of the first ever beat-em-ups, and not a lot of beat-em-ups after it, it's really perplexing to me. I mean, of all the things to copy from an early beat-em-up, this would definitely be one of them. This is awesome. There's a good selection of boss battles in Golden Axe, and there's also kind of mini bosses where it's like kind of the end of a stage or part of a stage, and some tough enemies come out, and you can consider that kind of a boss battle. Most of the bosses have their own little strategies that you need to implement to defeat them, but of course, magic is probably your best strategy. You could save up magic, not use magic on any of the enemies before a boss, and then just blow your whole load on the boss and really damage him severely. And I think it's probably the best use for magic, especially with characters that have a lot of magic, like the chick and the Abercrombie and Fitch dude. The story of Golden Axe is alright, but nothing special. It basically centers around you having to defeat this Death Adder guy. And of course, the plot is you having to beat up his lackeys along the way. It's nothing magnificent. I don't expect a good story from a beat-em-up. No one should. It's not an RPG. It's a beat-em-up. For what it is, the story is fine and acceptable, and I wouldn't put any more thought into it. And of course, the music and sound effects are excellent in Golden Axe, critically acclaimed throughout the years. So that's Golden Axe. If you haven't played it, and I mean, hand in your gamer card right now. If you're over 10 years old and you have not played Golden Axe, I don't know what you're doing with your life. You need to give up on gaming and start collecting stamps, sir. That's my review of Golden Axe. Play it again. Play it for the first time, although I don't know anyone who would be playing this for the first time. Goodbye, my friends. Stay tuned for the next game review coming up real soon.